A street vendor in Harlem was dying. Stage 4 kidney failure. She had no insurance, no family, no savings. For 10 years, she had fed every pregnant woman who walked past her cart. Hundreds of them. Never charged a single dollar. Now she was about to lose her corner, her cart, and her life. Then at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday night, 40 women knocked on her door. What they carried with them would bring a grown woman to her knees. If you've ever walked down 135th and Lenox in Harlem, you know the smell. Jerk chicken, rice and beans, collard greens slow-cooked since dawn. That smell owned that corner for a decade, and the woman behind it was Denise Okafor, 55 years old. Widow. No children. Just a beat-up food cart with a wobbly wheel and a cast-iron pot that used to be her mother's. Denise was not a charity. She sold plates for $8 to anyone who could pay. But she had one rule she never broke. If you were pregnant, you ate free. No questions, no paperwork. You walked up with a belly, she handed you a plate piled so high the rice spilled over the edges. How much for a plate for you? Nothing. You're eating for two. Over 10 years, she fed more than 400 pregnant women. Never wrote down a name, never kept a list, just fed them. But here's what nobody knew. Every night after the last customer left, Denise ate whatever was still sitting in the trays. Cold rice, leftover chicken, standing alone under a streetlight at midnight. The woman who fed everyone had no one to feed her. 6 weeks ago, Denise collapsed behind her cart, right there on the sidewalk. The doctors ran tests. The results came back simple. Stage 4 kidney failure. Transplant needed within 5 months. Dialysis 3 times a week. No insurance. No donor. No family. The doctor told her to stop working. She went back to the cart the next morning. Her hands shook now. Just enough that she gripped the serving spoon with both hands so nobody would notice. Her feet swelled so badly, she stood barefoot on the hot pavement because no shoes fit anymore. She told no one. She had 5 months. Maybe less. And nobody in her life knew. But Denise didn't know that every plate she'd ever given away was about to come back to save her life. Stay with me. 25 years before that, Tuesday night, Denise Okafor was a 30-year-old woman burying her mother. The church was small. South Side Chicago. Wooden pews, water-stained ceiling, a piano that hadn't been tuned in years. But the church was full. Standing room only. People lined up outside the door and down the block. Not because Brenda Okafor was rich. Not because she was famous. But because she had fed them. Women Brenda had cooked for when they had nothing, showed up with flowers they couldn't afford and tears they couldn't stop. Mothers who had eaten at Brenda's table when their own kitchens were empty. Pregnant women who had walked into the church basement hungry and walked out holding a plate wrapped in foil and something they hadn't felt in months. Hope. Brenda Okafor had been the unofficial cook of the neighborhood for as long as anyone could remember. She ran a kitchen out of the church basement 3 days a week. No funding, no organization behind it. Just Brenda, her cast-iron pot, and whatever food she could stretch into enough servings for whoever showed up. And she had a rule. Pregnant women always ate first. Always. Denise grew up in that kitchen. She learned to chop onions before she learned to ride a bike. She learned to season rice by smell before she learned to read a recipe. And she learned something else from her mother that no school ever taught her. How to see hunger in someone's eyes before they said a word. You don't ask if she's hungry, baby, Brenda used to tell her. You just hand her the plate. Asking makes her feel small. Giving makes her feel seen. Brenda had a way of looking at a pregnant woman and knowing. Not just if she was hungry, but if she was scared, if she was alone, if the baby inside her was getting enough. She could read it in the way a woman held her belly. Protective meant afraid. Loose meant too tired to care. Both meant she needed more than food. A hungry woman can't love her baby right, Brenda told Denise one evening while they were cleaning up. You feed her first, then she can feed the world. Denise didn't fully understand that at 15. She understood it at 30, standing over her mother's casket, watching hundreds of people cry for a woman who had never made more than $12 an hour in her life. Brenda died of complications from diabetes. She had ignored the symptoms for years, too busy cooking for everyone else, too busy making sure other people's children were fed. She forgot to feed herself, forgot to check her own blood sugar, forgot that the woman doing the saving also needed to be saved. She was 57. Denise did not cry at the funeral. She stood in the front row dry-eyed, accepting hugs from strangers who knew her mother better than they knew her. But that night alone in Brenda's kitchen, Denise pulled out the cast-iron pot. She made a batch of collard greens, her mother's recipe, from memory. And standing over that pot, stirring greens in a kitchen that still smelled like her mother, Denise cried. Not polite tears, the kind of crying that comes from somewhere below the ribs. The kind that makes your whole body shake. She cried into the pot, and she made a decision. When you feed someone, Brenda had told her once, you're not just filling their stomach, you're telling them something. You're saying, I see you. 2 weeks later, Denise packed one suitcase and her mother's cast-iron pot. That pot was heavier than everything else she owned combined. She took a bus to New York City. She had no plan, no job waiting, no apartment. Just a pot and a promise she'd made to a dead woman in an empty kitchen. She was going to keep cooking. The first year in New York, Denise washed dishes at a Dominican restaurant on Amsterdam Avenue for $6 an hour. She worked the night shift, came home smelling like grease and bleach, slept 4 hours, did it again. The second year she picked up a lunch shift at a diner in the Bronx. 2 jobs, 14-hour days. She saved every dollar she didn't spend on rent and beans and rice. The third year she found a used food cart on Craigslist. $250. 1 broken wheel. No canopy. The paint was peeling so bad you couldn't tell what color it used to be. She bought it with cash in a McDonald's parking lot. The fourth year, she fixed the wheel herself with a wrench she borrowed from her landlord. She learned to make jerk chicken from a Jamaican woman named Gloria, who lived 2 floors down. She learned rice and peas from Gloria too, and a sofrito recipe from the Dominican cook she used to wash dishes for. She combined everything with her mother's collard greens recipe and set up at the corner of 135th and Lenox. The cart looked like it had barely survived a war. But the food tasted like it came from a grandmother's kitchen, because it did. Within a month she had regulars, construction workers on their lunch break, nurses coming off 12-hour shifts, cab drivers who parked just to eat. They came for the food. They stayed because of the portions. Denise served plates like she was afraid you might not eat again tomorrow, but nobody asked her name. She was the food cart lady, the woman on the corner, the one with the jerk chicken. They paid. They said thanks. They walked away. And Denise stood behind that cart day after day, year after year, invisible in the way that only poor women who feed other people can be. Not ignored out of cruelty, just overlooked out of habit. She had become part of the scenery. Like the fire hydrant, like the mailbox on the corner. People knew she was there the way, a streetlight is there. You notice it when it goes out. Never before. Then one night in December, during her 3rd winter on that corner, everything changed. Denise was closing up. It was almost 9. The temperature had dropped below freezing, and her fingers were stiff from gripping the serving tongs all day. She was about to lock the cart when she saw her. Across the street. A young woman. Couldn't have been more than 19. Thin coat, no gloves, arms wrapped around a belly that was at least 8 months along. She was standing on the sidewalk, staring at Denise's cart, the way a child stares at something in a store window they know they can't have. Hungry. Not the kind of hungry that comes from skipping lunch. The kind that lives in your face. In your eyes. The kind that makes your body shrink even as your belly grows. Denise had seen those eyes before. In her mother's kitchen. In the mirror. She didn't call out. Didn't wave. She just filled a plate. Piled it high. Rice spilling over the edge. Jerk chicken on top. Extra collard greens because the girl looked like she needed iron. Then Denise walked across the street and held out the plate. Here, eat. The girl looked at the plate, then at Denise, then back at the plate. Her lip trembled. I don't have any money. I didn't ask. Eat. Her name was Tasha Caldwell. But Denise didn't know that. Didn't ask. She just stood there next to this girl in the freezing cold while Tasha ate, standing up on the sidewalk, tears running down her face, shoveling rice into her mouth like she hadn't eaten in days. Because she hadn't. Denise didn't say a word. She just stood there. Not pitying, not questioning, just present. Just making sure this girl wasn't alone while she ate. When Tasha finished, she tried to hand the plate back. Denise shook her head. Keep it. Come back tomorrow. Tasha looked at her. Really looked. Like nobody had looked at Denise in years. Thank you. 2 words. Said so quietly they almost disappeared into the cold. But Denise heard them, and something cracked open in her chest. Not sadness, recognition. She had been this girl once, standing in her mother's kitchen, hungry, scared, waiting for someone to notice. That girl's eyes. Denise couldn't stop thinking about them that night. She'd seen those eyes on dozens of women in her mother's kitchen. Young, scared, pregnant, alone, carrying a life inside them while barely holding on to their own. That was the night it started. That plate of food would change both their lives. But neither of them knew it yet. Over the next 10 years, Denise fed every pregnant woman who came to her corner. She never advertised it, never put up a sign. Word just spread the way it does in neighborhoods like Harlem, quietly, through shelters and clinics and church groups and whispered conversations between women who had nowhere else to go. If you're pregnant and you're hungry, go to 135th and Lenox. The food cart lady will feed you. She won't ask questions. And Denise had rules. She never broke them. She never asked a woman's name. She never asked how far along she was. She never asked about the father or the family or the situation. She never accepted money from a pregnant woman, even when they tried to pay after getting back on their feet. And she always filled the plate fuller than normal. Always. A regular plate was generous. A pregnant woman's plate was overflowing. Year 2. A teenager showed up, 16, maybe 17, pregnant, kicked out by her family. Living at a shelter on 128th Street, she came to Denise's cart every day for 3 months straight, never said much, just took the plate, ate, and left. Then one day the belly was gone, and the girl never came back. Denise didn't know if the baby lived, didn't know if the girl was okay. She never found out. She just noticed the empty space on the sidewalk where that girl used to stand, and she kept cooking. Year 5. A woman carrying twins. Husband left, working 2 jobs, barely sleeping. She started coming around in her second trimester. Denise fed her every day, and then she started making an extra plate, wrapped in foil, tucked into a plastic bag, handed over without a word, for dinner, because 1 meal a day wasn't enough when you were growing 2 people inside you. 2 plates, every day, for 4 months. They never discussed it. Year 8. Denise started getting tired in a way she hadn't felt before. Not regular tired, bone tired. Her feet swelled, her ankles disappeared. She started waking up 3-4 times a night to use the bathroom. Her vision got blurry around the edges some afternoons. She cooked barefoot because no shoes fit anymore. She didn't go to a doctor. She had no insurance, and the cart didn't take days off. If she didn't cook, the pregnant women didn't eat. So she kept going. Nobody counted how many women Denise fed over those 10 years. Not the city, not a nonprofit, not a journalist, not even Denise. She didn't keep records. She kept cooking. But if you had to guess, the number was somewhere north of 400. 400 women. 400 plates piled high. 400 times she said the same thing. For you, nothing. You're eating for 2. 400 women who walked away fed. And not one of them forgot the woman who did it. The money from paying customers covered ingredients for the next day. Barely. The free plates ate into whatever thin profit she might have made. Denise's take-home pay most weeks was close to nothing. She lived in a studio apartment on the 5th floor of a building with no elevator. She owned 3 sets of clothes. She hadn't bought new shoes in 4 years. "I'm not a charity," Denise would say if anyone asked. "I'm just a woman with a pot and a corner. But if you're carrying a baby and you're hungry, that baby is my business too." Her mother had done the same thing. Cooked for everyone. Forgot herself. Died at 57. Denise was 55 now. And she was walking the same road. She knew it. She could feel it in her bones, in the ache behind her eyes, in the way her body begged her to stop every morning, and she told it no. Not yet. Not while there are still hungry women on this corner. For 10 years, Denise fed mothers and asked for nothing. She didn't know that every single one of them remembered her, and they were about to prove it. But before that Tuesday night could happen, something else happened first. Something that nearly ended everything. A black SUV pulled up to the corner of 135th and Lenox on a Monday morning. The door opened and a man stepped out. Tailored suit, polished shoes. The kind of shoes that had never touched a Harlem sidewalk before and didn't plan on staying long. His name was Marcus Whitley, real estate developer. He was in the process of buying the entire block. Condos, luxury units, rooftop terraces, the kind of building where a one-bedroom costs more than Denise would make in 10 years. He stood on the sidewalk and looked at Denise's cart the way you'd look at a stain on an expensive shirt. "Ma'am, I need you to understand that this sidewalk is going to be part of a new development. You'll need to relocate your operation." Denise looked at him. She was holding a serving spoon in one hand and a foil tray of rice in the other. "Relocate to where?" "That's not really my concern." She didn't argue, didn't raise her voice. She'd been moved before. From Chicago, from her mother's kitchen, from every place she'd ever tried to build something small and good. Being told to leave was not new to Denise Okafor. It was familiar. The kind of familiar that settles in your chest like a stone you've been carrying so long you forget it's there. Marcus handed her a letter. Official looking. Legal language. 30 days to vacate the sidewalk. Failure to comply would result in permit revocation and possible fines. Denise read it slowly. She understood every word. She folded it and put it in her apron pocket. Marcus looked at the cart. His eyes moved over the chipped paint, the wobbly wheel, the handwritten menu taped to the side with packing tape. His condo project was worth $50 million. Denise's cart was worth maybe $300. But that $300 cart had fed more mothers than his $50 million building ever would. He didn't know that. He didn't ask. That night, Denise climbed the 5 flights to her studio apartment. She sat on the edge of her bed and looked at the cast-iron pot on the kitchen shelf. Her mother's pot. The one she'd carried from Chicago on a Greyhound bus 25 years ago. "If I lose the corner, I lose everything. The cart is all I have. The cart is all I am." She sat with that thought for a long time. The letter from Marcus on the nightstand, the pot on the shelf, the silence of a home that belonged to someone who had spent her whole life making sure other people never felt this alone. Then that same week the test results came back. She'd finally gone to a clinic. Not because she wanted to, because she collapsed behind the cart and a customer called an ambulance. Stage 4 kidney failure. Both kidneys operating at less than 15%. The doctor laid it out in plain terms. You need dialysis 3 times a week, minimum. Ideally, you need a kidney transplant within the next 5 months. Without treatment, your body will start shutting down. Do you have insurance? No. Do you have family who might be tested as potential donors? No. The doctor paused, looked at her chart, looked back at Denise. "Miss Okafor, you need to stop working and start treatment immediately." "If I stop working, the pregnant women don't eat." The doctor blinked. "Miss Okafor, if you don't stop, you die." Denise looked at the doctor the same way she'd looked at Marcus Whitley. Calm. Steady. Not defiant, but not afraid either. The look of a woman who had been told her whole life that the things she cared about didn't matter to the people making decisions. She walked out of the clinic. She went back to the cart the next morning. Denise was about to lose her corner, her cart, and her kidneys, all at the same time, and she had no one, or so she thought. Denise woke up at 4 in the morning the way she always did, not to an alarm, to pain. Her lower back throbbed like someone had pressed a hot iron against her spine. Her ankles were so swollen they looked like they belonged to someone twice her size. She sat on the edge of the bed for a full minute before she could stand. Then she stood for another minute before she could walk. She made it to the kitchen, pulled the cast-iron pot off the shelf, started cooking. Rice on by 4:15, chicken seasoned by 4:30, collard greens simmering by 5. She moved through the routine the way she'd moved through it for 10 years. Muscle memory. Automatic. Her body knew what to do even when her body was failing. By 6, the food was ready. By 7, she was pushing the cart down 135th Street. The wheel still wobbled. Her feet still ached. But the cart was full. And that was all that mattered. She served plates all morning. Smiled at every customer. Said thank you. Made change. Acted like a woman who wasn't dying. But her hands shook. Not a little anymore. Enough that she started gripping the serving spoon with both fists so the rice wouldn't spill. She positioned herself so customers couldn't see her wrists trembling. She kept her sunglasses on even when the sky was overcast because her eyes had turned a shade of yellow she didn't want anyone to ask about. Mama, you did the same thing. You cooked until you couldn't stand. I used to be angry at you for that. I used to think, why didn't you just stop? Why didn't you take care of yourself? Now I understand. When cooking is all you have, stopping feels like dying before you're dead. Around 2 in the afternoon, a pregnant woman walked up. Young, maybe 23, big belly, tired eyes, the kind of woman Denise had been feeding for a decade. Denise reached for the serving spoon, started to fill a plate. And then the world tilted. Her vision went black at the edges. The sounds of the street got far away. Her knees buckled and she grabbed the edge of the cart with both hands, holding on the way you hold on to something when the ground disappears beneath you. The pregnant woman stepped back. "Are you okay?" Denise blinked, forced a smile. "Just the heat, baby. I'm fine." She wasn't fine. She was dying. She finished serving the plate. The pregnant woman walked away eating, and Denise stood behind her cart, both hands gripping the metal edge, waiting for the dizziness to pass. It took 4 minutes. She counted every second. That night, Denise sat on the bathroom floor of her studio apartment. The tile was cold against her legs. She was nauseous. Her body was telling her in every possible way that it was shutting down and she needed to listen. She didn't listen. She looked at her hands, swollen, shaking. These were the hands that had served over 400 women. These were the hands that held the serving spoon. These were the hands her mother taught to cook when she was barely tall enough to reach the stove. Her mother's hands had looked like this at the end too. Swollen, worn out, used up from a lifetime of feeding people who needed feeding. Brenda Okafor had worked herself into the ground, and Denise had sworn she would never do the same thing. But here she was, on the bathroom floor, alone at midnight, doing exactly what her mother did. The difference was that Brenda had a daughter who cried over her casket. Denise had no one, no daughter, no family. No one who would notice if she didn't show up to that corner one morning. No one who would wonder where the jerk chicken smell went. She sat there alone. No one called. No one knocked. No one knew. The woman who fed everyone had no one to feed her. Denise had maybe 4 months left. She told no one. But someone was already watching. Someone who remembered a plate of food from 10 years ago. On a Monday morning in September, a 29-year-old nurse named Tasha Caldwell walked down 135th Street for the first time in a decade. She'd been assigned to the community health clinic on Lenox Avenue. New job, new start. She'd moved back to Harlem after years away, after nursing school, after building a life that began the night a stranger handed her a plate of food on a freezing sidewalk. She wasn't thinking about that night. Not consciously, but when the smell hit her, everything stopped. Jerk chicken, rice and peas, collard greens. Tasha stopped walking. Her feet just stopped. And for a moment she wasn't 29. She was 19 again, standing across the street, pregnant, starving, watching a woman behind a food cart, wanting to walk over but too proud to beg. She remembered the hands. Big, strong, scarred from hot oil and years of gripping metal tongs in the cold. She remembered the plate, piled so high the rice was falling off the sides. She remembered crying while eating because nobody had fed her in months. And she remembered the woman saying nothing, not a word, just standing there in the freezing cold. Not pitying, not questioning, just present. Tasha crossed the street. The cart was the same. Older, more chipped paint. The menu was still handwritten and taped on with packing tape. And the woman behind it was the same too. Older, thinner, something wrong in her eyes. Tasha bought a plate, stood across the cart from Denise, looked at her the way a nurse looks at a patient who doesn't know she's being assessed. Swollen ankles, yellowing eyes, tremor in both hands, shortness of breath between sentences, skin that had a grayish undertone no amount of sun could explain. "You've been here a long time, 10 years, give or take." Tasha paused, held her plate, looked at Denise with 10 years of gratitude pressing against her chest. "Do you remember me?" Denise looked at Tasha, studied her face. Something flickered, maybe recognition, maybe just kindness. Then she shook her head gently. "I'm sorry, baby. I don't keep track. Too many faces. Too many faces. Hundreds of women. Hundreds of plates. Denise didn't remember a single name, but every single one of them remembered hers. Tasha didn't say anything else. She ate her food, said thank you, walked away. But she came back the next day, and the day after that, and every day that week. She watched Denise the way she'd been trained to watch patients. From a distance, without letting on, she noted the symptoms, the worsening tremor, the increasing breathlessness, the way Denise had to sit down on an overturned crate behind the cart every hour, the way she pressed her hand against her lower back and winced when she thought nobody was looking. But Tasha was looking. On the 5th day, Tasha saw Denise try to lift a full tray of rice and nearly drop it. Her arms gave out. She caught the tray against the edge of the cart, food sloshing over the side, and stood there for a moment with her eyes closed, breathing through whatever pain had just hit her. That night, Tasha made a phone call. "I need your help. There's a woman on 135th who saved my life 10 years ago. She's dying, and she doesn't even know it. Or maybe she does and she just doesn't care." Tasha was about to do something that would change everything. But first, she needed to find the others. The women Denise had forgotten. The women who would never forget Denise. Tasha posted in a community Facebook group that night, the Harlem one. The one where people shared apartment listings and restaurant reviews and neighborhood news. She kept it simple. Does anyone remember the food cart lady on 135th and Lenox? The one who feeds pregnant women for free. She needs help now. If she ever fed you, please reach out. The first reply came in 6 minutes. Then another. Then 5 more. Then the thread exploded. She fed me every day for my last trimester. I never told her my name. My daughter is 7 now. I was homeless and pregnant with twins. She gave me 2 plates every night. 2. 1 for each baby, she said. I tried to pay her once after I got back on my feet. She said, "Pay me by eating." That's enough. My water broke at her cart. She called the ambulance and held my hand until it came. I never saw her again after that. She gave me extra collard greens every time because she said the baby needed iron. My son is 9 now. He's healthy. He's smart. And he's alive because a stranger on a street corner decided he mattered before he was even born. The messages kept coming. Women from shelters. Women from clinics. Women who had moved away and come back. Women who had never left Harlem. Women who were now teachers, nurses, cashiers, bus drivers, social workers, all of them connected by one woman and one cast iron pot. Tasha read every message. She made a list. She started calling people. And the plan took shape. Then a message came through that changed everything. "My name is Dr. Pamela Graves. I'm an obstetrician at Columbia Medical Center. 8 years ago, I was a broke pregnant medical student eating at that food cart every day because I couldn't afford groceries. That food cart kept me alive long enough to become a doctor. What do you need? I'm in." Tasha stared at that message for a long time. A doctor. A real doctor. Who had once been a hungry pregnant woman standing at Denise's cart. If that wasn't proof that a plate of food could change the course of a life, nothing was. Over the next 2 weeks, Tasha organized. She made calls from the clinic break room during her lunch. She sent messages late at night after her shifts. She tracked down women through shelters, through church groups, through word of mouth. Some of them had moved out of Harlem. Some had moved out of state. But when they heard the food cart lady needed help, they came back. Every single one. 40 women confirmed. 40 women who had been fed by Denise Okafor when they had nothing. 40 women who carried the memory of a plate of food the way you carry a scar. Not with pain, with proof. Proof that someone saw them when nobody else did. Some of them brought money. Some brought diapers and groceries, because old habits die hard when someone teaches you that giving is just what you do. Dr. Graves brought something else. She brought a plan, a medical plan. The kind of plan that only someone with a hospital badge and a debt to a food cart lady would think to make. They set a date. A Tuesday night. They made a plan, and Denise had no idea what was coming. 40 women. 40 different lives. 40 stories connected by one woman and her cast iron pot. And Denise had no idea what was coming. If you're invested in this story, you're not going to want to miss what happens next. Subscribe now so you don't miss the moment that changes everything. That Tuesday evening, Denise sat in her studio apartment in the dark. She hadn't turned on the lights. Didn't see the point. The streetlight outside her window threw a pale stripe across the kitchen, and it landed on the cast-iron pot sitting on the shelf the way it always sat on the shelf. Heavy, still, holding the ghost of every meal her mother had ever made in it. On the nightstand, 2 pieces of paper. The eviction notice. 7 days to vacate the sidewalk. And a prescription she hadn't filled because the medication cost more than she made in a week. She stared at the pot. Maybe Mama was right. Maybe cooking was the only thing I was ever good at, and now I can't even do that. She thought about the corner, about the cart, about the pregnant women who would show up tomorrow expecting a plate and find nothing. She thought about what her mother would say. She thought about what the doctor had said. 5 months, maybe less. She closed her eyes. Then someone knocked on the door. Denise didn't move. Probably the landlord, or a neighbor complaining about something. She didn't have the energy. The knock came again. Louder. Then again. Not angry, loud, insistent. The kind of knock that says, "I'm not leaving." Denise pulled herself up from the bed. Walked to the door. Opened it. Tasha Caldwell stood in the hallway. Behind Tasha, the hallway was full. Women. Dozens of them. Lined up down the corridor, spilling onto the staircase, voices echoing from the floors below. Some of them held children. Babies on hips. Toddlers gripping their mothers' hands. Small children who had no idea where they were, or why, only that their mothers had brought them somewhere important. Denise looked at them. 40 faces. She didn't recognize a single one, but every single one of them recognized her. Miss Denise. Tasha's voice was steady, but her eyes were not. You fed me when I was 19 and pregnant, and had nothing. You never asked my name, but I never forgot yours. A woman behind Tasha spoke. You fed me too. My son is 6 now. He's here. Another voice. I was sleeping in a shelter when you gave me my first hot meal in 3 weeks. My daughter is starting kindergarten this fall. Another. You gave me 2 plates every night, 1 for each twin. You said the babies needed their own food. Another. I tried to pay you back. You told me to pay you by eating. Another. You stood next to me in the cold while I cried into a plate of rice. You didn't say a word. You just stood there. The voices came one after another. Not rehearsed, not dramatic, just true. Simple sentences from women who had carried these memories for years and were finally saying them out loud. Denise stood in the doorway, one hand on the frame because she wasn't sure her legs would hold. She looked at the children. Babies she had fed through their mothers. Toddlers who had grown inside bodies she had nourished with jerk chicken and rice and collard greens made from her dead mother's recipe. Some of these children were 7, 8, 9 years old. Walking, talking, alive. And they had no idea that the woman standing in the doorway had anything to do with it. But their mothers knew. Then a woman in the back stepped forward. She was holding a little girl, maybe 3 years old. Brown skin, big eyes, quiet. Miss Denise, you fed me every day when I was carrying her. She set the girl down gently, and the child looked up at Denise with an expression that had no business being on a 3-year-old's face. Something ancient, something knowing. This is Denise. The woman's voice broke. I named her after you. Denise Okafor looked at this child who carried her name. This child she had fed before she was born. This child who existed in part because a stranger on a street corner decided that a hungry pregnant woman deserved a plate of food. She fell to her knees, not because she was weak, not because her kidneys were failing, or her legs gave out, or her body couldn't hold her up, because for the first time in 10 years someone saw her. Tasha knelt beside her, took her hands, the same hands that had held a plate out to a starving 19-year-old on a freezing December night. The same hands that had fed 400 women without ever asking a single name. We see you, Miss Denise. We've always seen you. Denise couldn't speak. She just knelt there on the floor of her hallway, surrounded by women she didn't remember and children she'd helped bring into the world, and cried the way she hadn't cried since the night she made collard greens in her dead mother's kitchen. But they didn't just come with words. They came with something else, something that would save Denise Okafor's life. Tasha pulled out her phone, held it up so Denise could see the screen. What is this? It's a GoFundMe page, Miss Denise. We set it up 3 days ago. Denise squinted at the screen. She didn't understand what she was looking at. There were numbers, a progress bar, a photo of her cart that someone must have taken without her knowing, and a number at the top, $87,000. Denise stared at it, blinked, looked at Tasha, looked back at the screen. What do you mean 87,000? It's donations. From the community, from the women you fed, from strangers who heard about you and wanted to help. $87,000 in 72 hours. Denise shook her head. This is too much. I can't take this. I didn't ask for this. You don't have a choice, Tasha said gently. We already decided. This money is for your dialysis, for your treatment, for keeping you alive long enough to get back behind that cart. A woman stepped through the group. She was tall, professional, wearing a white coat under her jacket. She carried herself the way doctors carry themselves. Certain, measured, but her eyes were soft. Miss Okafor. My name is Dr. Pamela Graves. I'm an obstetrician at Columbia Medical Center. Denise looked at her, nodded politely. The way you nod at someone you've never met. 8 years ago, Dr. Graves continued, you fed me every day for 4 months. I was pregnant. I was broke. I was in my last year of medical school and I was ready to quit. I couldn't afford groceries. I couldn't afford rent. I ate at your cart every single day and you never let me pay. Your jerk chicken specifically kept me going. Denise's face shifted. Something moved behind her eyes. Not recognition, something deeper. I remember the jerk chicken, Denise said quietly. But I don't remember you. I'm sorry. Don't be. Dr. Graves smiled. You didn't need to remember me. You just needed to feed me, and you did. Dr. Graves explained what she had done. She had contacted the transplant program at Columbia. She had pulled strings, called in favors, talked to the financial aid office. She had gotten Denise enrolled in a charity care program for patients without insurance. The GoFundMe would cover what the program didn't. Between the two, Denise's treatment would be fully funded. Every test, every procedure, every follow-up, covered. Denise sat there on the hallway floor, surrounded by 40 women, and processed something she had never had to process before. People helping her, not the other way around, her, the one who always gave, being given to. She didn't know what to do with her hands. Then Tasha knelt in front of her again, and her voice changed, got quieter, steadier. The way a person's voice gets when they're about to say something they've rehearsed 100 times in their head, but it still doesn't feel big enough. There's one more thing. Silence. I got tested, Miss Denise. At the hospital. Last week. Tested for what I'm a match. For your kidney, I want to give you mine. The hallway went still. Even the children stopped fidgeting, 40 women holding their breath. Denise's face broke. No, absolutely not. You're young. You need both your kidneys. You have a whole life ahead of you. I won't take that from you. You're not taking anything, Tasha said. I'm giving it. There's a difference. Baby, no. I just made plates. I just made food. That's not worth a kidney. Tasha reached forward and took Denise's hands. The same hands that had filled her plate 10 years ago. The same hands that shook now from a disease that was killing her. I have a life because of you. I was 19 years old and starving and pregnant and alone, and you walked across a street and handed me a plate of food and stood next to me in the cold while I cried. You didn't know my name. You didn't need to. You just fed me. And because you fed me, I survived. Because I survived, I went back to school. Because I went back to school, I became a nurse. Because I became a nurse, I can save you. The least I can do is share a kidney. Denise looked at Tasha and saw the girl she didn't remember. The girl with the thin coat and the big belly and the hungry eyes. The girl who had turned into this woman. This nurse. This person offering to cut a piece of herself out so that the food cart lady could live. I just made plates, Denise whispered. I didn't know I was making miracles. The woman who never asked for anything was being given the one thing she couldn't buy, couldn't cook, couldn't earn, a second chance at living. But the fight wasn't over. Denise still had a landlord trying to take her corner. And what happened next proved that 40 women with a mission are stronger than any developer with a checkbook. The following Monday morning, Marcus Whitley arrived at 135th and Lenox in his black SUV. He was there to supervise the removal of Denise's cart. 7-day notice expired. Time to clear the sidewalk. But when he stepped out of the car, the sidewalk was not clear. 40 women stood around the cart. Some held signs. Some held babies. Some just stood there with their arms crossed and their faces set in the kind of expression that says, "We are not moving." Children ran between legs. A toddler sat on the curb eating a piece of cornbread. The cart was open and Denise was behind it serving food because that's what Denise did. Even when the world was trying to shut her down, she cooked. Marcus straightened his tie. Walked over. Tasha stepped forward to meet him. "Sir, do you know what this cart has done for this neighborhood?" Marcus looked at the crowd, then back at Tasha. "It's a food cart. I'm building a $50 million development here. This food cart has fed over 400 pregnant women in 10 years. For free. How many lives has your $50 million building saved?" Marcus didn't answer. He looked around the crowd. Really looked. Not the way he usually looked at a construction site, assessing value and square footage. He looked at the faces. A woman stepped forward. She was holding a baby, maybe 8 months old. "This is my daughter. She's alive because this woman fed me when I had nothing. I was going to give up. I was done. Her food kept me going one more day. Just one more day. And that one day was enough." She held the baby closer to Marcus. The baby looked up at him and smiled. The kind of smile that has no agenda, no calculation, just a small human being doing what small human beings do when they see a face. Marcus looked at that baby. And something shifted. Marcus Whitley had built buildings worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Shopping centers, luxury towers, waterfront developments that looked beautiful in renderings and even better in press releases. But standing on that sidewalk looking at that baby's smile, he realized something he hadn't thought about in a very long time. He had never built anything that mattered this much. Not once. He stood there for a long moment. The women watched him. Denise watched him. The baby kept smiling. Then Marcus turned to Denise. "Miss Okafor, I'm going to build around you. This corner stays. And when the building goes up, your cart goes inside. Permanent lease, free." The sidewalk erupted. Women cheering. Children clapping because children clap when adults cheer. Denise standing behind her cart, still holding the serving spoon, tears running down her face for the second time that week. Marcus didn't do it because he was generous. He didn't do it because it was good press, though it would be. He did it because for the first time he saw what everyone else on that block had always known, that a $300 food cart could be worth more than a $50 million building. Denise had her corner. She had a kidney on the way. She had 40 women who loved her. But the story doesn't end here. What happened 6 months later will stay with you forever. The surgery was scheduled for a Thursday morning in February. Denise arrived at the hospital the night before. They put her in a room on the 4th floor. White walls, machines, the smell of disinfectant and institutional calm. Everything clean, everything sterile. Everything the opposite of her cart on 135th Street. She sat on the edge of the hospital bed in a gown that tied in the back and left her feeling exposed in ways she wasn't used to. Denise Okafor was a woman who stood behind things. Behind her cart, behind her serving spoon. Behind the act of giving. Sitting in a hospital bed about to receive felt like wearing someone else's skin. Tasha came in the night before the surgery. She was wearing a matching hospital gown. Her own pre-op preparations were done. Blood work, imaging, consent forms signed. She was ready. She sat on the chair next to Denise's bed. Neither of them spoke for a while. The kind of silence that only happens between two people who are about to share something that can't be taken back. Denise broke it first. "Why are you doing this? You barely know me." Tasha looked at her. "I know everything I need to know. You fed me when nobody else would. You didn't ask my name. You didn't ask for thanks. You just handed me a plate and stood next to me in the cold. That's enough. That's more than enough." Denise shook her head slowly. "A plate of food is not worth a kidney." Tasha smiled. "You gave me food when I had nothing. Now I'm giving you a kidney. Seems like a fair trade to me." Denise laughed. A real laugh. The kind that comes from a place that has been holding tension for so long that when it finally lets go, it sounds almost like crying. My mama would have liked you. Tasha reached over and took her hand. Tell me about her. And Denise did. She talked about Brenda, about the church kitchen on the south side, about the cast iron pot, about the collard greens recipe that she had carried from Chicago to Harlem like it was sacred text. She talked until the nurse came in and said they needed to rest. The next morning they wheeled both of them to pre-op, side by side, 2 gurneys, 2 women, one who had given food, one who was giving a kidney. The math didn't make sense on paper, but it made perfect sense in the hallway of that hospital, where 40 women sat in the waiting room, some praying, some pacing, some holding sleeping children in their laps. Dr. Graves supervised. She checked charts. She spoke to the surgical team. She walked between the waiting room and the operating floor with updates. The doctor, who once ate jerk chicken on a street corner, was now making sure the woman who cooked it survived. The surgery took 4 hours. Nobody left the waiting room. When it was over, Dr. Graves came out. She didn't need to say anything. Her face said it. Both are stable. Both are doing well. The transplant was successful. The waiting room erupted the way it had erupted on the sidewalk, cheering, crying, children waking up confused and then cheering too, because that's what everyone else was doing. Denise woke up in recovery. The room was dim. Machines beeped. Her abdomen ached in a way she'd never felt before. But something else was different too. The heaviness was gone. Not just the pain, the weight she'd been carrying, the exhaustion that went deeper than her kidneys. Something had lifted. She turned her head. And on the small table next to her bed, she saw it. The cast iron pot. Tasha had brought it from Denise's apartment, had asked a friend to go get it that morning, had placed it on the table so it would be the first thing Denise saw when she opened her eyes. So you see something familiar when you wake up, Tasha had told the nurse. So she knows she's not alone. Denise reached out and touched the pot, cold iron under her fingers. Her mother's pot, the pot that had crossed from Chicago to Harlem on a Greyhound bus. The pot that had cooked 1,000 meals for 1,000 people who needed feeding. She couldn't speak. She just lay there with her hand on that pot and cried. She had a new kidney. But what really saved her was older than medicine. It was a plate of food given freely 10 years ago. 6 months later, Denise Okafor stood behind a counter again. Not the old cart. The cart was gone. In its place was something she never could have imagined. A small kitchen built into the ground floor of Marcus Whitley's new development on the corner of 135th and Lenox. Nothing fancy. Tile floors. A serving window that opened onto the sidewalk. 3 tables inside. A canopy outside for when it rained. Above the door a sign. Hand-painted. The letters were wobbly and uneven because they'd been written by a 7-year-old girl named Denise, the little girl who had been named after her. The sign read, Brenda's Kitchen. Denise had chosen the name herself, not her own name, her mother's, because everything she knew about feeding people, everything she believed about what a plate of food could do, came from Brenda Okafor, the woman who cooked in a church basement on the south side of Chicago until her body gave out. The woman who said, a hungry woman can't love her baby right. The cast iron pot sat on the counter, center stage, right where everyone could see it. It was the first thing you noticed when you walked in. Not because it was beautiful, because it was real. Scratched and dented and seasoned with decades of meals that had kept people alive. Denise cooked jerk chicken, rice and peas, collard greens, the same menu, the same recipes, the same smell that had owned that corner for more than a decade, and she still had the same rule. But something was different about Denise now. Not just the new kidney, not just the health that was slowly returning to her body. Something in her face, a softness that hadn't been there before. For 10 years, she had cooked with the quiet intensity of a woman who believed she had to do everything alone. Now she cooked with the ease of a woman who knew she wasn't alone anymore. She still arrived at 4 in the morning. Still seasoned chicken by feel. Still served every plate like it might be the last meal someone ate that day. But now, when she looked up from the counter, she saw faces she recognized. Faces that recognized her back. She was no longer the invisible food cart lady. She was Denise. She had a name. She had people. A young woman walked up to the counter, belly round under a thin jacket, eyes tired. The same eyes Denise had seen 1,000 times before. How much? Denise looked at her. Smiled. For you, nothing. You're eating for two. The same words. The same plate piled high. The same refusal to take money from a woman carrying a child. Some things don't change. Some things shouldn't. But other things had changed. Every Saturday morning, Dr. Pamela Graves came to the kitchen. She set up a folding table in the corner and offered free prenatal checkups to any pregnant woman who walked in. Blood pressure, weight, basic screenings. The kind of care that costs hundreds of dollars in a hospital but costs nothing at a kitchen counter next to a pot of collard greens. Tasha came after her nursing shifts. Still in scrubs, she served plates, cleaned tables, talked to the young mothers the way someone talks to people they understand because they were once exactly where these women are now. 12 volunteers showed up on a rotating schedule. Women from the neighborhood. Some of them were part of the original 40. Some were new. All of them had heard about Brenda's kitchen and wanted to be part of it. In 6 months, the kitchen served 200 pregnant women. For free. 3 volunteer doctors. 12 regular volunteers. What started with 1 woman and a broken cart had become a movement. On the wall behind the counter, Denise had hung 1 photograph. Just 1. A picture of her mother standing in the church kitchen in Chicago. Brenda Okafor. Holding a big wooden spoon. Smiling. You don't have to say thank you, Denise told the young woman as she handed her the plate. You don't have to come back. You just have to eat. That's all I need. One afternoon in October, a young woman walked into Brenda's kitchen carrying a pot. Not a new pot. An old one. Cast iron. Heavy. The kind of pot that has been used so many times the surface has turned black and smooth like river stone. She set it on the counter and looked at Denise. She was maybe 22. Thin. Determined eyes. The kind of face that has already seen more than it should have at that age. My name is Amara. Denise wiped her hands on her apron. Nice to meet you, Amara. You hungry? Amara shook her head. I didn't come to eat. I came to find you. Denise looked at her, then at the pot, then back at her. My mother was one of the women you fed. She was pregnant with me when she came to your cart. She said you gave her a plate every day for 3 months. She said you never asked her name, but she told me yours, every day. She said if I ever needed to remember what kindness looks like, find the food cart lady on 135th. Denise's breath caught. My mother passed 2 years ago. Cancer. But before she died, she gave me this pot. And she told me to find you. She said you would teach me. Amara pushed the pot closer. Denise looked at it. Old iron. Scratched. Seasoned. It looked like her mother's pot. It looked like every pot that has ever been used by a woman who cooked not because it was her job but because it was her calling. I want to learn, Amara said. I want to cook like you cook. I want to feed people the way you fed my mother. Denise looked at Amara and saw her mother. Not Amara's mother. Her own. A young woman standing in a kitchen learning to cook because an older woman told her the food was more than food. It was language. It was love. It was a way of saying, I see you, without opening your mouth. Denise took Amara's hand and placed it on the cast iron pot. You feel that? That's not just iron. That's memory. That's every meal ever made in a pot like this. Every mother fed. Every baby nourished before it was born. You don't learn to cook from recipes, baby girl. You learn from your hands. Your hands remember what your head forgets. Amara's eyes filled with tears. Denise held her hand on the pot. The same way Brenda had once held Denise's hand on a pot in a church basement in Chicago 40 years ago. I see you, baby girl. And your mama sees you too. That evening after the kitchen closed, Denise stood on the sidewalk outside Brenda's kitchen. The streetlights were coming on. The smell of jerk chicken still hung in the air. Somewhere down the block a woman was laughing. Somewhere a baby was crying. Harlem doing what Harlem does after dark. Denise looked up at the sky. The same sky her mother had looked up at in Chicago. The same stars that had watched over church basements and food carts and hospital rooms and all the places where women feed each other because that's what women do. Mama, I kept cooking. I kept feeding. And they came back. They all came back. She smiled. And she believed the way you believe things you can't prove but know in your bones that somewhere Brenda Okafor was smiling too. Thank you for following Denise's journey from invisible street vendor to the heart of a community. If this story moved you, if it made you think about the people you walk past every day without seeing, please subscribe to this channel and share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. Tell us in the comments, who is the person in your life who fed you literally or figuratively when you had nothing, who saw you when the world didn't? We want to hear your story. Remember, you don't need millions of dollars to change someone's life. Sometimes all it takes is a plate of food, a pair of hands, and the courage to say, I see you. A full plate is not just food, it's someone saying, I see you. You matter. Your baby matters. Stay blessed, stay bold, and never stop feeding the world in whatever way you can. Subscribe now and turn on notifications so you never miss another